I'd like to introduce you all to the next speaker. Lee Taft is co-owner of Sports Speed Incorporated and president of Lee Taft Speed Academy Incorporated. Lee earned his BS in physical education from Cortland State and his MS in sports science from the United States Sports Academy. He is certified by many top organizations, including the National Strength Conditioning Association. Lee has spent over 2 decades discovering the true principles and foundations of functional multi-directional speed. Lee frequently does clinics and camps around the United States, and let's welcome him back from last year.
Thank you. All right, thanks everyone. I appreciate you sticking around for the presentation. Hopefully I can share some information that will kind of open your thought process as to how to include multi-directional speed into your program. Kind of like what Vern was saying is I want you to just kind of listen in depth as to what it is that I'm saying and not have too many preconceived notions as to what you think I'm saying or what should really occur. Most of what I teach and what I will present on is from watching the body move for since I was a college athlete in the mid-'80s. I just started watching how the human body moves as an athlete, whether it be basketball or football or tennis or soccer. There's commonalities that we all do, regardless of training, regardless of the exercises that we've instilled into these athletes. There's certain natural reactions that occur. So as we go through this presentation today, there's things you're going to see that are going to be totally against what you believe or what you've been taught. But hopefully you can understand why I address it as I do. Some of you have seen me speak before, so you'll see some of the same videos. The funny thing is and this is one thing that I think is a lot of the top coaches that I've learned from over the years is that they have been teaching many times the same things since they've gotten into the industry because there's certain undeniable things that occur. Why change it? Okay, why change what you do if it works really well and it's safe and you're getting results? So many of the techniques that you'll see on here are the same things I've been doing since I got started in the industry, simply because it made a lot of sense to me. I think one thing that helped me was when I first started researching speed when I was in college, probably about my junior year in college, is there was not a lot of information out there on multi-directional speed. There was a lot on linear speed. You could study any kind of European speed training. I have a great resource on German sprint training, but I couldn't find anything on like cutting or change of direction really in depth. There was a few things. So what it forced me to do is just kind of figure it out. And the best way for me personally is I'm very kinesthetic, and if I watch something, especially if it's athletic movement, it makes a lot of sense to me, and I can assess things pretty fast when I watch it. So I started watching athletes. I watched myself on film when my basketball coach made us watch our games. I watched Michael Jordan and Barry Sanders and even athletes further back. And those are the types of things that helped me be able to understand what I should be seeing in the first place before I do any kind of a training effect with it. Okay? So, are we on? Did I just lose my... Yep. I just lost my PowerPoint. Oh, there we go. Good. Good. All right. Okay, so here's what we're going to... All right, here's what we're going to hit today. We're going to go right into it. I have a lot of video, and I'm just going to go into these areas of multi-directional speed. If you touch on these 5, there's so many areas each one of these 5 can kind of spiral off into. But if we can touch on these, you're going to kind of get an overall view of what multi-directional speed through my eyes as to how I see it. So the first one is multi-directional acceleration, then deceleration. Then we're going to talk about change of direction. Cutting is basically change of direction, but there's a different system that I use for that. And then retreating. I don't think we do enough of instructing our kids on how to, or athletes, not our kids, but how to move backwards. Okay, we don't only backpedal. Matter of fact, we don't backpedal that much in most sports. It's usually we open our hips up and we either cross over, we shuffle, or maybe we turn and run. But it's retreating away from the play. All right? So I'm going to go right into our first video. This is a video that I've used for many years, and the reason I stay with this one is this athlete was asked to come up during a training session. She was early in her training with us, only a couple weeks, and I'm on video, and my assistant's behind her, and I just asked her to stand on the line, and we're doing an acceleration move. One of the most important concepts I want to talk about, and you're going to see it a lot today, is repositioning. Repositioning is something when an athlete moves quickly in acceleration forwards, sideways, or backwards, there's usually some kind of repositioning step. In other words, the foot doesn't stay where it is. It finds another angle to push the athlete in that new direction. We also use repositioning to decelerate. So if I'm shuffling like this and I'm going to decelerate, my foot will find a better angle quickly. What I get from that, and you'll see this in a minute, is I get to take advantage of something that helps our body move fast, and it kind of creates a real quick bracing of the joints, and it's just a plyometric or a stretch shortening cycle, okay? So you'll see this when Josie does this action. Now, she hasn't been taught a lot on sprint technique or acceleration form, but you're just going to see the natural reaction. If you saw an advanced athlete that I've had for maybe 10 years, 15 years, you would see the same thing as you do with a girl that we've had for like 2 weeks, okay? So here it is. This is called a repositioning step. I phrase it a plyo step. Okay, what's the first thing she does? She takes a step back, okay? That is, in most training programs, against the law. It's called a false step. Not allowed to do a false step. She was not instructed what to do there. She was just told to run as fast as she could as soon as she heard a signal. The signal was the clap, and she just took off. If you look at my body in the athletic stance she was just in, the point of push-off is the ball of my foot, okay? So as I'm down in my stance, most of my body is behind the ball of my foot. So the only way that I can go forward, number one, is to roll. So I have to be here, and if I roll, once I reach a critical point, then I can start to push back. The other way is to pull myself forward and go. I don't think any of you as strength coaches, or definitely not as a head coach, want your athletes taking that long to get into their acceleration. Their starting speed has to be much faster. So the body already knows what to do. It figures it out on its own. This is not a great push-off angle for me. Okay? This is. So the body just gets me there quickly, and because of that plyometric action, it allows me to take off really fast. There's been research studies now that have shown that. And the funny thing is, I had one probably 5 years ago sent to me, and it was a study in Europe of using force plates, and they used 3 different stances. A staggered stance, they used a parallel stance where they didn't allow the plyo step, or they called it a paradoxical step, and then they allowed it. And it showed the plyo step was the most efficient on the force plate. All the data was most positive with that step being allowed. And the funny part was they said when they had the athletes like this and they tried to just get them to go forward, they kept doing this. So it took them longer to do it. And the study was good because then I could send it off to other people who needed it. I didn't need it. I've already worked with 10 years of athletes prior to that, or actually more than that. So I already knew it was there because everybody does it. I'm watching Miami and the Knicks last night, the game, and I'm just watching the defense, and anytime there's a loose ball or an action, that's what happens. It's natural, it's instinctive. Now, if it doesn't happen, it didn't happen for a reason. They didn't need it. Some athletes don't need it. If I'm going laterally, and I'm in this kind of stance, I'm kind of narrow, my shoulders are as wide as my feet. Okay, I'm not in a great lateral moving stance yet because they're too narrow. I can't push off. So you might see that happen first. But if I'm a baseball player, I should never do that. If I'm stealing, I should be wide enough, knees inside. I should be in a great position to be able to take off. A track athlete should never have to use it. They know where they're going to go. But in this case with this young lady, she didn't know what she was going to do other than just run straight ahead. She didn't think about moving her feet. She just did it. So let's just watch one more time. Just quick reaction, pushes her forward, natural reaction. Okay, not a lot of thought into that. That's repositioning. Now, you'll see this again. This is what we call a hip turn. This athlete is going backwards. He hears it, turns around, there's no pivoting. Okay, pivoting is too slow in most sports. Now, if you're a basketball player and you have the ball in your hand, you have to pivot. because otherwise it's a travel. But if you're on the defensive end and we do these shuffle drills and we get here and we pivot and open up, that's way too slow. And athletes don't do it anyway. When you make the drill live and it's fast, they don't do it that way. They can't. It's way too slow. And plus there's friction. And then in order to pivot correctly, I have to get some of my body over the foot, vertically aligned. Then once I've made my pivot, now to push off, I am not on a great angle to push off with. I have to have my foot outside my knee and outside my hip. So what happens is we shuffle, we hip turn, and then we push off. And it's very explosive. We get to take advantage of that stretch reflex we want. Okay, now, this is Will, same thing, young athlete, and he's going to go forward, and we're not going to allow him to reposition, all right, or no allowing him to reposition. All right, so watch. Okay, so he was told, don't take that back step. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll put their heels against a wall or as close to a wall and say, don't hit the wall when you take off. Go straight ahead. That's usually what happens right there. Okay, so he's just trying to find an angle to push off with, and it's not there. This is Josie, the one you just saw. She's going to do the same thing. Okay, so it's really awkward for them to do that. I had an athlete the other day, this week. He actually is now a coach. I trained him for about 2 or 3 years. He was a basketball player. He's out of school for 2 years. And he just started coaching 8th grade boys basketball. And he comes over, and I kind of mentor him, and I'll take him through. And he asks me questions on strength and conditioning and movement. And he said, Lee, I got a bunch of my basketball players, and I'm trying to break them of one habit, and it's they keep wanting to take a step back every time we take off because we do a lot of sprints in this stance to go forward. And I said, well, Brendan, you've been training with me for how long? Have I ever stopped you from taking that? I've never taught you that, but I don't stop you from that. That's how you move naturally. He goes, but it's a step back. I said, do they all do it? He goes, yeah, they all do it every time. I said, well, there's your signal right there. Stop trying to discourage them from doing something that's natural to them. They're much quicker that way. So what I asked him to do is take the athletes and put them in partners. Put one right next to the other, and one of them is allowed to just do what they do naturally, and the other one isn't. Have them race. Have them race from the baseline to the foul line, a pretty short distance. And you'll see which ones get out of their starting position much quicker. Okay? And every time, the athlete that is forced to either roll forward or push off without taking a step back always starts off slower. Now, this is what will happen is most coaches will say to me, well, yeah, but if you train them enough and you get them leaning and they roll and they time it, I'm like, well, who has the opportunity to time in a reactive sport? I don't know what you're going to do. I'm guarding you. I don't know what you're going to do. If it's a sport where I have no doubt that it's going to go forward, it's going to go in front of me, why would I stand this way? Why not just stand like this and go straight ahead? So you need to be in the best athletic stance you can be to move in any possible direction. Because if I do the ball drop drill, which I'm sure a lot of you do, just stand there with a tennis ball and drop it and they got to go get it, well, they'll eventually start to cheat it and try to roll forward. Well, what I'll do is I'll take it and I'll just flick it quick over their head. And they're caught rolling forward. I said, that's a bad athletic stance. You're not on balance. You're not ready to move. You couldn't react to the real situation what just happened. That athlete went by you. So you don't want your athletes getting in the habit of rolling into it. The other part of this is most times your athletes are not going to be flat-footed. They're just not going to be standing. They're going to be bouncing or hot feet or something like that is going to happen in most sports, okay? All right. Linear starting acceleration speed, body lean, power line, throw the hands. These are kind of cues that I like to use. Drive the knees forward, low foot recovery. When we're talking about acceleration, and I'm going to show you in a second here a track athlete coming out of the blocks, that back foot when it comes forward is very low. It is not a step over. We're not sprinting, so it's totally different. One of the big things for me is throwing the hands back. We have to open the hands up. You got to open the elbow up in acceleration. It will close down as we start sprinting more and we get tall posture, but early on, you've got to allow it. And the reason is the more force I can put back with my arm, that will equal the force that I'm going to drive forward with my knee. And as this knee goes forward, the other leg pushes down and back in the ground. So it all works together. If you only have your athletes use a short arm action coming out of the blocks, they're not going to have a very long leg stroke. It's going to be very short. Okay, now I'm going to try to stop this so you can see. This is a track athlete. He's, I believe, early college. Didn't get it. Okay, well, you can kind of see, I caught him a little bit late, but you can kind of see the arm here. He's still up, and if you notice, if you work with track, he's popping up quite a bit. He's not going out as much as he can. So let me get it through. You'll see one more angle here. See the hand? You could see that left hand really drive back. Okay, let me get it back to the beginning again. I want to have you see this one more time. Oh, shoot. I'm trying to get it where I stop his arm, where it... Oop. Okay, let me try it one more time here. See if I can get his arm. Didn't get it, sorry. Well, anyway, if you notice, when the arm comes out, it comes out very, very long. That equates to the leg action, okay? Because the leg action, when he comes out of that, the knee is driving hard. This leg is pushing back. If the arm action is short, you're going to get a short stroke action with the legs. You got to let it go. And in a minute, we're going to talk about lateral speed. You're going to see the same thing. Lateral acceleration is not short and quick. It's long, if you want to accelerate. Now, if you're just positioning your body, you're moving just kind of medium speed, 75% speed, you won't go as long. But if you're trying to accelerate, you've got to open it up. Okay, here is an athlete just coming out of they were in a push-up stance. So they're coming up out of their stance, and you can see the angle really long here, opening the arm up. This arm would normally be shorter, but because they're coming out of a push-up stance, the arm dropped a little bit. But there's tremendous force being put into the ground, which affords you to lean. Don't say to your athletes, lean so you can run faster. It's the other way around. Create more force into the ground. That allows you to lean. Okay, because if you lean going slow, we call that a fall. Okay, lateral shuffle, all right? Now, or lateral acceleration. We're going to talk shuffle first, then we'll go into crossover. Now, when we do a shuffle, the force should be with the backside leg. If I'm going to my left, it's my right leg that creates all the force. The front leg, okay? The front leg actually pulls, but it does not pull first. That's what you have to understand. I never advocate for the lead leg to initiate and then the back leg pulls. Okay, that's crazy. You just can't move that way. We don't pull ourselves through movement, we push. Okay, so what happens is when this back leg gets us going, we've got mass and momentum moving. Well, the lead leg has to do something. It can't not touch the ground. It's got to touch the ground. So what it does is it pulls, and then the feet meet underneath the body, and then the back leg will push down and away again. The lead leg extends out, and then it pulls back. And what will happen is it's going to pull with its heel. That lead leg will pull with the heel. The toe will turn out. And I'll go through this, and I'll show you a couple clips of this, some pictures, but then I'll demonstrate it as well. Because everybody automatically says, well, if your toe's turned out, how do you stop? How do you get your foot back in the right position to stop? It just happens. It happens naturally. And again, that's one of the things of watching athletes. There's never a teachable moment right there. I don't have to say to an athlete, make sure you get your foot back. The only time I would say that is if they're chronically turned out. Then we have to do something through mobility to get them to be in a nice straight position, a deceleration angle. All right, so I'll show you that. Okay, the recovery, again, it's under the hips. Sometimes the feet hit. I've had a lot of coaches say, well, my athletes, when they shuffle, they get this clicking, their feet hit. I don't care. I did it when I played, and I was probably quicker laterally than most athletes when I played. That was why I was able to play college basketball, is because I was a very, very quick athlete. I wasn't very strong. I didn't overpower athlete, but I could move and I could defend really well. My feet hit all the time. You'd hear click, click, click every time I did it. Never tripped me once in all my years of playing. So if it is an issue, correct. If it isn't, leave it alone. Don't overcoach. Okay, now, if you notice, there's what I just described was the lateral gait cycle, and I'll go through it again. But if you notice, on all these athletes, each one of them has their front foot turned out, okay? This one you can really see she's digging in with the heel. This one's further over. You can see she's already pushed off, so the foot's come down. She hasn't quite toed off yet, and so she's using some heel, okay? So the lateral gait cycle, just like the regular running cycle, what happens is we have to push with the backside. The lead side, because the body's already moving, will pull. And when they pull, they meet in the middle, and then this one takes over again, and you push. Now, as I push and this leg reaches out, it's creating an action-reaction force. When this leg goes out, it pushes this leg back down into the ground. And the way that I show this is I have athletes get on a slide board with one foot. So this foot would be on the slide board, and I'll kick this leg out, and this leg immediately moves. Okay, it's a very simple cue for them to see, oh yeah, that really works. Well, that's what happens. So if I shuffle, if I'm here and I go across, okay, you can see push, and the lead one recovers underneath after it pulls. Now, if I went this way first, that just doesn't make any sense. And that's the way basketball used to be taught in the defensive shuffle. They used to teach foot out and then pull in. Step, slide. You can't. You're just not strong enough to do that. Okay, we got to push, and as we're pushing, that lead leg will just start to pull us across. The other thing we have to do to make the lateral gait cycle efficient is we have to stay level. I use a phrase, staying in the tunnel or playing in the tunnel. Stay level. Move your body underneath a really stable, solid hip structure, pelvic structure. Don't go up and down to get your range of motion. Move it from underneath it. Stay level with your hips and your head and your shoulders, and let your feet do the work from there. Okay, so now here's another one. This was John, who was an assistant at the Speed Academy when I had it in New York, and I did the same thing with him. I put him on the line. I said, John, just start shuffling. And I caught him on film, and this is the clip I got off it. Immediately, the foot turns out. And why? And this is just my theory as to why, and it makes a lot of sense in my head, which can be dangerous sometimes, but that's what it does. If I am shuffling sideways, and what most coaches will say to me is, why don't you want them on the ball of your foot? Well, here's the thing. If this is my foot, okay, here's my knee and I'm down, here's the ball of my foot. So this would be my heel. If I'm touching here and I'm shuffling, I'm fighting this rotation of my heel wanting to come in because I'm pulling, so I have to fight that rotation. That's a long ways away from the point of contact of that axis, which would be right underneath my heel. That's where my ankle is. Now, if I stay, even if I stay on my heel and my foot straight ahead and I pull, now I'm using all adductor, all groin. That's not real efficient. It's not as strong. But if I turn out, which naturally happens, I don't teach this, I just endorse it because it happens, and when I pull, now it's hamstring and it's glute. Everything turns on. So if you just stand there and pull, everything turns on. So when I shuffle, that is natural, it's stronger, and it's safer. And I demonstrate this stuff all the time, doing it a long time. I never get groin pulls. Never. I've had people say, you're going to get groin pull. Well, why does the body do it anyway? It does it naturally. I didn't teach this. This is just stuff I endorse, and I tell coaches, stop trying to change what the athletes do naturally anyway. So that's the reason, in my mind, that it occurs. It's stronger. The heel it's like a shovel. It just digs in and it pulls. And when it's done well, it's quick. I'm watching Mario Chalmers last night defend, and I'm watching him do it the whole time. And I wish I could have got a clip of it because then you could see it live. Just watch a game. Watch a tennis player move quickly laterally. Watch a soccer player. You will see it all the time. Here's the recovery. These athletes that we saw earlier, now they're all recovering. Each one of them, they're recovering underneath. These guys look like they're ready to hit their feet. Okay, that's the recovery phase. Now what will happen is this backside leg will get ready to push down and back. This leg would kick out. And that's how we incorporate what we call the lateral gait cycle. And they're trying to stay level the whole time. Okay, now lateral acceleration, the crossover and directional step. Okay, to me, the crossover is one of the most critical speed skills you can make sure an athlete does well when we're talking about lateral movement. The shuffle is good for positioning and when you're as fast as the athlete in front of you is moving. If they're moving faster than you, you can't shuffle with them. You're just not fast enough. So what we do is naturally we'll go to a crossover. So if I were shuffling with somebody and they start beating me, I'll just start crossing over, turning my hip. So it is not crossing the feet. Okay, I'm not crossing my feet. This is not a poor movement pattern. What I'm doing is my hips turn, I disassociate my upper body, I stay oriented to you, and I allow myself to run with my lower body, shuffle with my upper body. I'm not turning and going like this. It's just a big crossover, and I come across that way. That's a crossover. To do the crossover well, we have to do the directional step, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to show you a video of a young lady, a basketball player, and then a young boy, a tennis player, and you're going to see the difference in the sport specificity of a crossover and how it works based on the pattern that they always do. Okay, so basketball player is bigger, it's longer. Tennis player's not as big and long because they play higher. They're looking over the net always. Basketball player's down a little bit lower. So this is it right here. So here's a young basketball player. Okay, so watch it's coming back. See the front foot kind of turn. See the front foot turned. She's trying to stay oriented to the person over here. Okay, bottom foot turn so it can push off. She can become a sprinter with that lower body, disassociate the upper body. Okay, so that's a crossover by a basketball player, what it kind of looks like. And again, neither one of these athletes I didn't sit there for the camera and say, this is how I want you to do it. Just move. I wanted them to move. Now, this athlete is 8th grade. The girl was 8th grade as well. This boy's 8th grade, and he's top 20 in the country in tennis at his age group. So he's a good player. Now, what you'll see on his first step, he does a shuffle. He shuffles out, and then he kind of gathers himself. Then he goes into his crossovers. But watch the difference of the crossover with him compared to the girl. Now, you might say, well, it's because he's resisted. He's resisted very little, and also the resistance a lot of times helps increase the length because they have to push more. But notice his pattern is very small. He doesn't turn his hips quite as well, and that's one of the things we're working on with him. And he doesn't, if you watch you'll see it on the next one here, watch his hips. He doesn't have a great hip turn, but that's a typical looking tennis crossover right there. A recovery step is what we call it. In 91, 92, 93, I worked a lot in the tennis industry at Bulletari's, and I was at Palmer Tennis Academy, and I spent a lot of time with tennis players, and that is more common as to how they look. But anytime they have to explode quickly, they got to gain distance, you're going to see a bigger step naturally. But after a tennis player hits a ground stroke, it's usually just kind of recovering back. A basketball player is always trying to stay in front of a defender so it's bigger. Okay, a football linebacker dropping back into their zone, you're going to see a pretty good length because they got to cover some distance to get into their zone. Okay, directional step. This is one of the things that I see this missed often in the industry. And again, it's my opinion, but I've seen it so many times. And I will see certain techniques being taught by different facilities. And then I'll watch their athletes that they work with on TV. Some of them are professional or college, and they don't do it the way they're instructing them to do it. They do it what's natural. And this is a perfect example of it, directional step, especially when base stealing. I've spent a lot of time on teaching base stealing technique, and too much reliance on the front foot. The front foot has to get out of the program until it's time for the front foot to be used, and I'll demonstrate that. But allow the back leg to do its job by moving the center of mass over the front foot. Don't use the front leg in the first pushing action, which would actually be pulling because it's in front of the center of mass. All right, the front foot prepares, uses the directional step to take over the momentum and take on the acceleration to make it even greater, okay? Now, if I'm going to my right, and let's just use base stealing because that's what we're in. You could see it with the girl that was doing the crossover. She used a directional step. Directional step simply means the lead leg will lift and turn, and it'll get in a position to be able to push down and back. It's going to recruit hamstring and glute and a lot of posterior action of the body to be able to project it forward, not by planting the leg, pushing here, and then driving up and across. That's too slow. We don't gain any distance. I don't want... Here's my center of my body, right down the middle. I don't want anything in front pulling me there. I want to get pushed there. Once I get pushed there and I start going and this turns and it gets set, then I can start on my acceleration. Remember, you want to become a sprinter as fast as you can. When we're talking about base stealing, that's why I'm not a big fan of this or this or this. It's right here at the belt, hands right here, because ultimately when I turn, this is where I want to be. So we start by teaching the hands first. When the hands move, this leg automatically, because of action, reaction, it automatically starts pushing. So we're here, quick hand action. That starts this leg to push. Center of mass starts moving. Lead leg directional steps. Now we're ready to go. So in speed, it's here, and then we can go. Here, quick, drive, lift, push, and go. It is not quicker to go like this and go. You're fighting too many things. You're fighting friction. You're trying to pivot on that lead foot. You're trying to push with adductors. It's, if you can remember this, it's external, external. That's what we want. Externally rotate, then internal, internal. Not internally first. We don't internally rotate to accelerate initially. It's got to open. Initiate the action with the arms, and you'll get a quicker start. I used to watch, I'm a Yankee fan, sorry about that, I'm from New York, but arms dropped. I'd see Bernie Williams drop like this. It just creates a slow action. There's too much torque going on. Just be simple. Right here, quick hands, get into it and take off. Same thing if I'm a basketball player. All of a sudden the play gets over here and I'm in my defensive stance. I'm not going to cross like this. It's push, cross. Push, directional, then cross. Okay? All right. This, I'm just demonstrating this. This is a steel stance here. Okay? Watch the hands. Oop. Man, I was quick at one day. What happened? Arm action. All right, let me get to the second one here. Okay, you can see the lead leg. Directional, it's turning, back foot finishing, hips starting to open, external, external, and then the arms are ready to drive, okay? Oop. Here's the picture of it, okay? Back leg pushes, lead leg prepares. Also, super aggressive arms. Arms have to be big and long. You can't really see it that well, but this back arm is open. It's driving because I'm trying to create as much force and as long. Acceleration is about long force, not quick, short force. You know, you want to be as fast as you can, but it's got to be, in other words, you've got to drive as long as your foot's on the ground. So when I go to take off, I don't want quick, short, choppy step. It's got to be push, push. Get out there and drive as hard as you can. Okay, repositioning occurs again in deceleration. So we're going to talk a little bit about deceleration right now. And how am I doing for time? I go to quarter of, I think, 5:45. Repositioning, when we decelerate, whether we're running forwards and I have to stop, or I'm doing a shuttle run, or if I'm shuffling sideways, you reposition to an angle that meets the demands that the mass and momentum are providing at that time. So if I'm shuffling like this, I can get away with just a small little angle because I don't need it. But if I'm shuffling pretty fast, my angle gets pretty wide. I'm dorsiflexed. The knee is pushed forward, okay, not this way, hips back, shoulders over knees. Now I've loaded my joints, the chain. If my foot is turned out, even though structurally it's dorsiflexed, functionally it's kind of going plantar flexing. It's opening up. As I turn out, it gets further and further away from a full dorsiflex position. And when I'm dorsiflexed, now I get that stretch advantage of the stretch shortening cycle. So when we plant, that's how we want to plant. And what you have to always understand is, and I think I have it on here in a minute, is deceleration isn't in and of itself the skill you want to teach. What you want to teach is deceleration is the first step in reaccelerating. Okay, so if I'm teaching like a 5-10-5 for a combine or a 60-yard shuttle or in the NBA, they do their quick lane shuffle drill. It isn't about decelerating. It's about getting off the deceleration as fast as you can. So I don't want to have a lot of this. It wants to be a cross, push, hit it, push. Get into the ground, create force into the ground, and then get into reaccelerating as fast as you can. Don't get caught up on just the decelerating. Now, if their deceleration technique is bad, you have to stop them. And you walk them through. But ultimately, you got to get them going as fast as they can out of the deceleration move. Okay, so here, don't think stop, think start. So get it going, get your body lean, your angles. One of the things that hurts great foot position, when we get athletes that really have good footwork, plant really well, is poor core control, which shows up in shoulder sway. I like to call it shoulder sway. Stop, and they do this, or they dip down. That's what kills a great plant. So you have to be you have to brace, got to be strong, and if I know I'm stopping, so if you're teaching a shuttle run, the athletes know the distance. Okay, they know the distance. There's the white line. I got to get to that white line and turn. So when they come up, they already should be leaning, and they know how to do that. But if we're running a shuttle run, but I do it on your command when you blow the whistle, I don't know. So you're going to see sometimes, they'll do that type of stuff. They have to be really good at repositioning and get the body tilt. Body tilt from side to side. Okay, it's always like the side of a house. Okay, side of a rooftop. You want to be on angles all the time. We don't want to come over this way. Okay, we got to be strong. But not only do you have to be strong, you have to be exact with your angles. When I work with athletes on decelerating, the unique thing is kind of fun to do is when you work with athletes on the defensive side of it, it's much more important to be exact because they can't make a mistake. They get beat. A cornerback in football, okay, a defensive soccer player, lacrosse, or infielders, basketball players. But the offensive player, decelerating is tactical. They know it. They can set it up. They can make it happen, and that's where we're going to get into cutting in a minute. You'll see how I use the ladder and different things to initiate cutting skills. Okay, so when you teach decelerating, you want to make sure that you're teaching it tactical and then reactive. Okay, here's the same group of girls. Now they're at the end. So they started way in the back here. They started their shuffle. You could see the heel. You could see the feet get together. Now they're decelerating. This girl is into her plant getting ready to go. But notice the shoulders are inside the feet and the knees. She's already pushing off, going back. She's getting ready to take off. And look at her front foot is already turning out as she's going back that way. So it's the angle, the hips back. They plant and they drive off. Got to be dorsiflexed when we do that. Okay, now here is a boy that just started last week. I got this film on him, 6th grader, and I'm a big fan of low box training. And the reason I do low box training is, and I started this actually in '91 at Bolletari's. I remember I had a group of European tennis players, juniors, and they were in, and a lot of them just struggled with moving their feet quick. And they struggled with getting into a deceleration angle. They'd go out and they'd hit a ground stroke, and they were double and triple stepping rather than being able to get their foot around and then come back. So I started to use, like they had aerobic steps there. So I started using them and developed kind of a system now when I use it. This kid has never done them before. You'll see him. You won't hear me, but I'm giving him cues the whole time. You'll see him get better just in this short video, and he finds a really good angle, and his feet get better. So watch. Nope, sorry. Okay. He's figuring it out. You can see him trying to he's going too high. Now I'm talking to him. So now he's getting a little better. And then he starts to get it. Now he's popping into the angle. Look at his feet always straight. He's still too high. That was not, certainly not one of the better ones. But you can see him getting better. He's going up and down. And what I like to see when I do low box training is them to get in their stance that they normally would be. His feet, I would rather see like little wider angles, but he's at least getting the concept of moving the feet underneath the center of mass. So it's decelerate, 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 and hit the ground. Create force in the ground because that elicits the stretch shortening cycle that we want. And there's a whole series that I use with the low box stuff that really help athletes get it. Stay in the tunnel. That's where athletes who, especially younger athletes or weaker athletes, college, pro athletes that are really weak, bad knees or whatever, they like to do things and they push and they always want to get into extension. You got to stay down and push through the movement, push through it. Stay down. Same thing if I'm moving forward, but I'm in a good stance. Maybe I'm closing out in basketball or I'm fielding a ball. Stay down. Move. Don't let your head come up. All my movement should stay level. It's not up and down, because then I don't have the ability to find the angles to push off. If I stand like this and I get in a slight knee bend, the greatest angle that I could get from here to push off is about there, to feel comfortable. But if I'm down here, now I've got that much, and that allows me to push off even greater in the direction I want to go, not vertically. So there's a mix. You can't go too wide, because now I can't push off. But if I go too close, now it's too much of a vertical force. So it's got to be the correct angle, and the body's very good at finding it. All right, now staying in the tunnel. I did an event called the Pro Style Combine. Just a group of area athletes came in. I had about 70 athletes, and these kids were not taught anything. They just came in, went through 6 stations. This was one. This was a 5-10-5, and you'll see what I mean by not having footwork, not staying in the tunnel. Pop up. He uses one foot. Notice that he used one foot the whole time. He liked his right foot, so he turned his back. Well, we don't want him to turn their back. Okay, here's an athlete that does a better job, still slips a little bit, but he does a pretty good job of getting in and out of his cuts. This kid was actually a very good young football player. A lot of them had a hard time moving on the turf. They slipped. But see, down, and he tries to come out of it. Okay, so it wasn't too bad there. Got a little bit better. That last kid you had, this was early on. A lot of these kids signed up in our program after this, so you saw them raw. After a while, these kids got pretty good with it because we drilled it. We worked on it. We emphasized it, and more importantly, we cued it. Cueing is one of the most powerful coaching tools you have, so choose your words wisely. That's why when I say throw your hands back, our kids get that immediately. They understand this early on. They understand staying in the tunnel. Cutting. All right. This is, again, it's a type of a repositioning, but it's more specific. All right. Here's the type of cutting skills that I generally will teach my athletes, and then we add according to their sport. So we do rehearsed cutting. So if you can imagine taking a cone and every 5 yards at 45 degrees setting a cone up. It's rehearsed patterns. We're just teaching them how to pop the ground and how to cut. I'll show you it in a minute in a short scale in my garage. And then we do random, where they don't know where they're going to cut. Then we do a fake cut. Fake cut you got to be good at because it can pull you. I know what I'm going to do. If you're guarding me, you don't know what I'm going to do. Well, if my fake is too strong and I pull myself out of position where my body is over my knee, outside my knee, I'm not going to be able to cut very good. So when I make that, I got to get an angle so I can still fake out, have an angle to go the other way, and then breakdown cut or something like a jump cut, not a true jump cut, where I come in and I kind of split step and then go. We come off a split step or a jump stop. And then we have specific cutting, speed cut. Speed cut would be like a skinny post in football. Just a slight little turn. Should not see a lot of dipping. Hips should stay tall, run through it, slight change of direction with the leg just to get me to turn a little bit. Sharp cut would be now we're breaking down and we're going to lower our center of mass to dig into the cut and then break out of it. So that would be like a 5 and out, 10 and out, or a comeback. I come in, I lower, and then I come back. Okay? And then a spin cut, we teach the athletes how to actually spin. The key to this is it's always the inside leg. I don't spin off the outside leg like that. I come in, I plant my hips around, and then we turn. So I worked for about 6 to 8 weeks with a high school lacrosse team. We spent a lot of time on that. They come in, somebody comes across your face, okay, it's turn the hips, protect, and then spin and rotate. So we find angles by repositioning our feet when we cut. Okay, I was talking earlier with a strength coach here, and I think one of my favorite assessment tools are tag games when I first get an athlete or a team. And the reason why is when you and I have specific games that I do for specific reasons. when you get athletes in tag, number one, it's fun, but number two, it becomes very competitive. No one wants to get caught, or you don't want to not catch someone. So it becomes very live action-like, becomes very sport-like. And what happens is, as a coach, I can see the instinct coming out of the good athletes. I can say, this guy's got it. She's got it. This one's not, they just don't get it. So in other words, if we're doing a box tag game, box tag would mean in this corner there's a line, in this corner there's a line. The first two people come at each other. This line are the taggers. That's the avoiders. They come at each other, and this group's trying to tag them. Well, the athlete on this side, if they come full speed ahead, full sprint, and they try to reach, and this guy just does one juke step, and they miss him, I understand this guy doesn't get it. But if I get the athlete that comes in hard first few, and then breaks down and ready to go, they get it. They understand what they should be doing. Okay, so that it gives me the opportunity, before I even start instructing them, all right, who's got it? Who understands movement in its most natural state? And tag's one of the best ones. So all these tag games are great games to use, and I got a lot of them. Some of these I've got from other people. Jeremy Boone has some good tag games and stuff. And then I've had some from just years of teaching phys ed even, but I kind of put it into an athletic assessment screen, and that's how I use them. This right here is a lead-up skill to improve cutting. And I'm going to show you in a minute the ladder, and I'll show you how we use the ladder. And I had actually my daughter do it, and she went through it kind of quick so you could see the patterns, but the emphasis wasn't exactly where I wanted it. This exercise right here is good because when we cut off the outside foot, or the inside edge actually, but my outside foot this way, or sometimes we have to use the inside cut like this. If I'm coming in, I fake and I plant this way and go. This trains the feet and the ankles to be responsive and quick, and it builds strength, functional stability and mobility. All right, so you'll see this is that tennis player that did the crossovers. He has gotten pretty good at this. Okay, so if you look right here, down here in the bottom, you can see the typical X tape, 4-quadrant drill. We'll do different drills for cutting and change of direction on those as well. And then I do a lot with a line. All I'm doing is I'm trying to train his body to be able to stay still and have his feet move underneath the center of mass. I don't want the center of mass moving with his feet. You got to be able to do this and have the feet go underneath it. It's like the dot drill. Do the dot drill, and if I'm on the first, the dot in the middle's there. You don't do the dot drill like this, right? It's you stay over the center dot and you move like that. That's how we find better angles. We move quicker. So that's the concept behind that. Now here, you might see really quick, but my daughter, she's 8th grade, and I asked her to come out really quick one night. She had taken a shower and didn't want to get her hair wet, so she had a hair net on or whatever. Not a hair net, but a bag on her head or something. So she goes, you promise you're not going to shoot anything high? So I think I'd get her one shot here. But this is the typical icky shuffle. I'm going to take you through how we use this. I basically do 3 drills with the ladder. Okay, I have a few others that I'll do and I'll talk about, but basically we're trying to emphasize in a couple things. And again, she's doing this kind of quick. And this is called the crossover icky. And I'm sure a lot of you have done this or seen it. A lot of the ladder, this is the reverse crossover icky. This is the beginning stages of opening the hips to retreat, going backwards. Now, the ladder, when it first came out, was big. Everybody loved it. And then all of a sudden, a lot of experts came out and said, the ladder's bad. It doesn't teach anything. It teaches bad patterns. Well, it's because you don't know how to use it. Okay, every tool is bad and every tool is good. It depends on what you do with it. Okay, and the ladder, to me, gives me specific things I can focus on to improve my athletes in cutting. So the icky shuffle. When we set up for the icky shuffle, my emphasis is on the cutting action on the outsides, not in the inside. Okay, so not when I'm in the ladder. So the pattern is 1, 2, out, 1, 2, out, like that. But what we try to do with the athletes is sit them down a little bit, and we try to pop the ground hard on the outside. So it's in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. That's how we want, that's the rhythm of the ladder icky shuffle. It isn't, I've got like even my daughter and some of these kids can go, they go 1,000 miles an hour through it. Well, good, but they're off balance, their feet are turned, and it's not right. We're trying to get them to understand, hit, because if I hit and I have to make a break, that's what I want. So the rhythm is hit 1, 2, hit 1, 2, hit 1, 2, hit 1, 2. That's the icky shuffle. That's what I use it for. Okay? Again, I don't do a lot of drills. There's only about 3. There's 2 others I'll throw in there with the ladder, but it's for a specific reason. Now the crossover, the same thing. When you cross over, it's opening up the lead foot, and we step across into the ladder with 1 step, and then we go out with 2. But it's about disassociating upper and lower body, and it's about turning the belly button. Okay, so it's here, come across, turn, pop, pop, go. All right, so it's not fast in the ladder, it's fast when you're outside the ladder. Same thing on the backwards, all right? Somebody's trying to beat me backwards and going over my left shoulder here. I have to open, cross, step, step, cross, create that force into the ground. That's the emphasis we want with the ladder. So it helps cutting and it helps acceleration and retreating, okay? All right, now here's cutting. You'll see when we do cutting, and the reason I have them go through rehearse cutting first is because I want them to get the pop. And the pop, I know it's not probably a great cue word because you don't want to hear a pop, but what we want to emphasize is I want them hitting the ground quickly. Okay? Cutting is not this. It's too slow. And the knee is never vertical when we cut. I cannot overcome mass and momentum with a vertical knee over my foot. It has to be at an angle. So I'm pushing down and out. So when we come in, it's here, it's cut. Watch Michael Vick. Watch these fast, boom, boom. It's just quick. There's not a lot of hip dip. It's just they find an angle and they accelerate. They let that stiffness take over and that stretch shortening. So watch, Jay, you'll see her go through. It's kind of sloppy, but she has the emphasis right. Pop. Quick. Just find an angle. So because her hips are tall, the angle's not real wide. It doesn't have to be. The lower she goes, the more it's going to be. Okay? Okay. Hip turn. I want to take you through the hip turn movement pattern here. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm actually going to show you. Let me show you the video first, and then we'll take you through the progression of this. This is, you saw this at the beginning. Right now, it's a case where the athlete has to retreat quickly. Something happens behind him. He's got to get back. And what's going to happen is it's going to disassociate. The upper body stays forward as the hip turns, finds an angle wide, and pushes off to take off. The reason you don't want the whole body moving together is because we want to take advantage of the stretch shortening in the core as well. That helps us respond and react on the way back. So watch again here. Okay, look, you can see the hips are going first. The shoulder, especially this shoulder, it's not opened yet. All right, but the belly's starting to open. He's found an angle, dorsiflex, foot straight ahead, starting to go off. And he gets a good push off and immediately gets into a lean. When you teach retreating, and I'll take you through here's the progression right here for the hip turn. And I'll take you through it. But when you're teaching retreating, you want to emphasize shoulders forward all the time, even though I'm going backwards. Most coaches will say, well, if they're going to go backwards and they're leaning forward, how do they manipulate their body? Well, what happens is the hips come around. You find an angle. Now when I push off, I'm already leaning. But if I get up high, it translates my body back onto my heels. That's when you see athletes spin out of their backwards movement. So it looks like this, and they kind of come out, take a couple steps to get redirected again. So if you're watching me this way, I come up, you don't want that. You want this. Now I can turn, I can go in any direction quick. Shoulders are always forward. So the first one is the quick hips. This is a drill. You've seen it a long time. Some coaches call it quarter eagle in football. Gene Hackman did it in the Hoosiers. And it's just one of these drills where we go like this and back. The problem with it is it becomes very sloppy. It ends up being like one of these things. Well, that's not going to promote acceleration. So what we do, step number 1, we get them to flip their hips and we tell them where they're going. Okay, so I'll go this way. I'm going to turn towards you. So we hip. All right, now, If you notice, my right knee is inside my foot because I'm pushing down and out. If I'm vertical, I push up, and I start to roll. So I've got to get around here. Chest is still facing my opponent, but I've got a great angle now to push off to either shuffle, which is step number 2, okay, crossover or run. So the quick hips is let's just get them to learn where they want to be. I'm learning to disassociate around my upper body through, my pelvis, through my hips, okay? Now, the next step is get there and get back. So it's here, but you have to freeze them every once in a while to make sure they don't start doing it real sloppy where they're tall. It's always, can you push off? Can I find that angle and push off? If they can't, their feet are too close. The angle isn't there, and they're not pushing off. The goal is to be able to push your body away immediately. So when I make my turn, I should not be here. The minute I turn, I got to get out of there, so it's here, boom, kick. Get away from that spot and get into whatever movement you have to do, okay? So hip turn to shuffle. And what I normally do is I'll put a starting cone and then maybe like 4 or 5 yards cones on a V, so it looks like a V. And they'll start here, and they hip turn, and they just shuffle, and then you can either have them run back, shuffle back. They could close out, whatever you want to do, okay? Get them back, then have them do it going the other way. Your next one, teach them the crossover. Now, here's my rule. The crossover should take half as many steps. So if I hip turn and shuffle back here for 5 yards, probably could do it in 2, all right? So I hip turn 1, 2, and I'm there. Crossover should take me 1. Here, big crossover, and I'm there. Because I stayed level, I pushed into the ground, created an angle, and it got me going in the right direction, and shoulders in front. Shoulders can't be back because it puts me on my heels. Got to load, get on the ball of the foot, all right? Then we go hip turn to run. So lob, tennis lob, long hit. In baseball, we hip turn, and we take off, and we just sprint, okay? Now, this is where I think we can make the big impact, is we want to teach the athletes the mistake because they're going to get in it. You know they are. They're going to make a mistake. They're going to lunge. They're going to deny the pass and get caught, and the play's going this way. Now, we might say, well, why not turn and go like that? Well, maybe you do. I don't know. That's an instinct call. If you're running straight at me and you do like a skinny post and I'm caught this way, it doesn't make any sense for me to turn and try to catch you here. But in basketball, it's not like that. It's more, peripheral. It's around you. So if I'm caught like this, so what we'll do, set a cone up here, all right? Take 1 foot, bring it in so I'm out of position going this way. And we teach them to flip and go. Okay, then we go the other way. Flip, push. So it's this. You got to get them to disassociate their hips really, really well. Because when they do, they're extremely fast. One of the things that I like my athletes to get in their mind is and it sounds simple, is to be quicker than the other athlete and be more intense. I wrote an article once on the intensity of speed. We get caught up too much in just teaching the drill rather than focusing on the skill. Once we focus on the skill, that's why the ladder can be just a bunch of drills, or it can be the skill of cutting. This hip turn is the skill of first step acceleration and retreating. And if I focus on the intensity, rather than it being here, it's got to be up, push, and go. If I get intense with the athlete and I focus like that, we get faster automatically. Then it becomes a challenge for them. Can I beat that athlete who has the advantage? Offense always has the advantage. Can I be quick enough to beat them? And we have to instill that. So I don't do a ton of reps, but what I do is I get them to get angry and get mad, and I compete the heck out of them. You versus me. All right, we're going at it. When we do the 5-10-5 shuttle, I don't even talk about decelerating. I talk about the first one back here. Immediately, all of a sudden, the angles clean up really good because they're trying to beat the next person. If there are issues, I fix them. But if I can just get them to be more intense, stay in the tunnel, it's amazing how well they'll move. Okay, they really move well. So make sure you get them in bad positions and teach them how to get out of it. That's never your focus. Don't always start there. But you know they're going to make a mistake. They're going to lunge. They're going to get caught. How do they get out of it? Okay, I think I'm just about there. Always develop your program based off what you know to be true in regards to multidirectional speed. I do not have a system where I teach the plyo step. I don't teach this. I endorse it, which means I allow it to happen. If for some reason an athlete didn't use it, well, they didn't need it at that particular time. They were in perfect balance. When we're shuffling sideways, and all of a sudden I got to go forward, and they do this, they did it because it was natural. Now, if they made a mistake, used the wrong foot, and it forced them to round, I'll fix that. That's called the sub-skill or the linking skill. Shuffle is a skill, sprint is a skill. That linking skill that made them change direction, that's the skill I want to focus on. What did they do right or wrong at that point of change of direction that I can make their movement cleaner? Okay, more efficient. That's called a linking or a sub-skill. If I'm in my stance and I have to go this way, watch my feet and tell me if this is correct or not. If I'm going this way, all of a sudden I see a bunt and I have to go off on an angle. Would that be correct? Or that be correct? The second one, the left. My body's already here. Why use the foot in front and bring it all the way back here? Just push. Directional step, and I'm in my run, rather than bringing this one back and going like that, because my movement didn't move my body. I made a movement here, but it didn't go anywhere. This movement immediately pushed my center of mass. Okay? So assess what you have. Okay? What you have, athletes in front of you, this is what you have. Assess those athletes as to how they move, not how you think they should move. Watch them move. And then kind of fill in the holes as you go. And then keep sets and reps in control and don't overshadow technique. When I'm doing metabolic training, I focus on sets and reps. Got to get you 10 sets of 80s today or 5 sets of 300s with rest intervals. I'm going to stick to that. But if I'm doing speed training, it's about technique. Because if I say, all right, we're going to do 4 sets of lateral shuffle and they all stink, I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to make sure we clean it up. So when I do skill training for speed, it's based on how I felt and how the athletes responded to it. But if it's metabolic training, then I'm a little more, I got to stick to when I'm coaching track athletes, I got to get them in shape, so we're going to push that limit. So, and that's it. So thank you. I appreciate your time. Hope you have a great night. Thank you, folks. Okay, good.